Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1254, written by Dawnmountain, the Tornado Siren that never was. Around the time I was in 8th grade, I went back to Illinois to visit my family. For context, my best friend still lived a block from my grandma's house, and I had lived in the same area for a long time prior to moving. One day, I got permission to hang out with my best friend at her house. I was going to sleep over. Day goes by just fine, no weird stuff. I sleep on the couch. She sleeps on a recliner. I am a light sleeper, but if something wakes me, I know it. Around 5 a.m., I'm forced to wake. It takes a second to get my bearings, but then I hear it. It's this loud, constant sound. Think of a tornado siren stuck on its lowest setting. I turned to my friend, who was awake but listening to music via earbuds, loud enough for me to hear. She just nodded and said, "I hear it too." She sat next to me and we waited. It sounded like it was coming from the other side of the wall, the outside wall, which had around a 10 to 15 foot drop to the ground. It was so loud it was deafening. Around 7 a.m., it started to fade, but in a way that made it sound like it was walking away. In the next room, there were no doors, was her mom and brother. We asked if they heard it because it was so loud they had to, yet they didn't. What's more, my friend has told me that same day, around 9 a.m., I got violently sick. My grandma had to come get me. I don't remember this at all. Thing is, I know it wasn't a tornado siren. I know that area like the back of my hand, and I've heard the sirens from my friend's home. It's a grid, meaning some people can barely hear the sirens while others are next door. At her home, it's very distant. My friend doesn't like to talk about it, but it's been years and I won't ever forget it. Case notes file 1254, the tornado siren that never was. You and your friend both heard the anomalous sound, and yet your friend didn't get sick. You did, and don't remember it. Sounds like some sort of memory block is involved, which typically indicates aliens. Aliens and mysterious sounds, but no lights. I'm not sure about this one. I don't think the fabricated memory would be induced to be exactly the same between you and your friend, but it is a weird anomaly between them. Being sick suggests some sort of physical effect too, trauma even. Placing a bet, I'd go with the transitory warning sound. So, when servers shut down during a gaming match, warnings exist. You're always notified before they do. Of course, we're always playing the game and we can't disconnect if life is a simulation, a game. And it's rare for this to happen to us when server has to be closed down, so maybe some issue in the real world, so they had to shut it down and transfer everything over. And I think because of that, you weren't meant to wake up. The sound could be some sort of artifact from the real world infiltrating into the simulation. Creepy file number 111, written by SaintStoney, the stranger who vanished in the rain. My friend and I would drive out to the bush, Australian, to smoke every night. We had a spot we'd go, about 20 minutes drive from the closest civilization. There were still houses out there, but they were more rural properties and farms. We'd go to the top of a long, steep road that ends in a walking track into a national park and forest. The road ends in a cul-de-sac, and I'd always turn around and reverse down into the bushes, so the car and us were facing the road up the hill. One weeknight, after midnight, we were sitting there smoking, watching The Office on a laptop in the rain. Out of the rain and darkness, in front of us, a white shape appears, walking towards us. A man in a white dress shirt and black pants walked over the hill directly towards us. It was almost 1 a.m., raining, and at least 20 minutes walk from the closest house. We freaked out, dropped our smokes to try and account for the car full of smoke. This guy did not at all acknowledge us, but walked over the hill, right past the car, and onto the walking track into the national park. We were more worried about being caught with substances than anything else. But soon after the man walked right past the car into the darkness, we realized it was strange. I hit the brake to illuminate the bush behind us in an eerie red light, but we could not see him anywhere. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened, and after we calmed down, we kept chilling and watching The Office. I'll never know who that guy was or why he was walking alone into the bush after midnight in the rain in dress clothes, but never paid attention to us despite passing within a meter of our car. My friend and I referred to him as Sad Guy, as that's the most reasonable explanation we could come up with. Not exactly common in my part of the world, but it wouldn't be the first time someone wandered into the bush to end themselves. And that's the story of the strangest thing that's happened to me. Not exactly flashy, but something that has stuck with me ever since it happened. Case notes for the creepy file number 111. The stranger who vanished into the rain. Yeah, this being a sad man, I could see that. What other explanation can be conveyed other than a man very much so down on his luck? It wasn't some park employee, they'd have a raincoat on, poncho or something like that. Not a dress shirt and all that in the middle of a storm, in the middle of nowhere. It is always unsettling, isn't it? When you're in the middle of seemingly nowhere, assured that you're alone, and then you get a realization that no, you're not actually alone. It's happened a few times to me in the past while camping. Nothing negative ever happened, they weren't hostile, but they're probably just as surprised as you are. But it still shakes up the soul a bit, doesn't it? Bonus file written by Anonymous. The Ghosts of Shiloh Battlefield. Nearly 25 years ago, I was at the battlefield in Shiloh, Tennessee, with a buddy of mine who is a Civil War aficionado. This was smack dab in the middle of summer, and it was incredibly hot and humid. I had been to Shiloh when I was a kid with my dad and my buddy, and I had already been there once or twice, so we knew our way around, knew the layout, knew the history, etc. When the battle was raging in 1862, soldiers would cool off in a pond, and also die in it, hence its name, the Bloody Pond. Let it be said I'm not a believer in ghosts, hauntings, etc., but that aside, I'll continue the story. We eventually made our way to the Bloody Pond, and were heading off in the woods to the east of it to find a marker. As we were walking towards the woods, we passed the Illinois Monument. Then it happened. On an incredibly hot day, a cold wind hit me in the face. I looked at my friend and he had this look on his face like, what just happened? We both talked about what had happened and had no explanation for it. After we had gone to the woods and came back alongside the monument, there was no cold wind, just hot, humid air. We talked about what had happened for years after. I have told my wife and kids about it, along with a few friends. There's still no good explanation for what has happened, as I've never felt a cold wind in the summer before, nor after. Case notes for the bonus file. The Ghosts of Shiloh Battlefield. So I have heard of strange air currents of cool air, sort of like underwater currents in the ocean, with the different thermal properties. Air does behave much like a fluid. That said, while I've heard of this weather phenomena, it's supposedly very rare, and also never happened to me either. Could this be just a simple weather anomaly? Maybe. If it was related to the spirits in the area, I wonder if they can sense doubt and skepticism? I try to empathize as much as I can with other people and even other possible entities like spirits. If I was a spirit and knew humans that doubted my existence were there, I wouldn't be angry at all, but I would want to signal to them that I do indeed exist. Not too many options as a spirit to do this, outside of physically manifesting in the mortal realm, which I don't think spirits can do easily, or we'd see them far more often. So instead, a quick drain in the surrounding heat energy in the air, leading to a gust of cold wind as it flows downwards to the ground. So weather anomaly or spiritual signals? Can't say for sure, but not too surprising given it is a battlefield, that there would be spirits there. And now time for the quote of the day. Avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. Colin Powell. Yeah, I mentioned this before in a different quote, but if your ego is tied to a belief, then you can never let that belief be wrong, because then your ego dies, and we are tethered to our ego. And that's not necessarily bad. Keep that in mind. Our ego is important. We need to feel like we matter and that our position in the world is relevant. You know, if we just diminish ourselves to nothing, like ego death, I think is going too far. You don't want to be diminished to nothing. But again, that middle balance. You want to find a place where you have ego, you have pride in the things you've done, things you know. It's a very difficult tightrope to walk because you need to have that ego, but also not tether it to all the beliefs that you have because they could be wrong. I'm not immune to this either. I try to be, but it's very difficult as humans. We do naturally tend to attach our ego to certain opinions, usually political, but it could be religious, it could be anything, really. I mean, people tether that to what brand of products they buy or pizza and all that. I mean, I will My ego is tethered to having pineapple on pizza. Like, that's just wrong. There's no way I'm wrong on that. It doesn't go well. No. On anything else, I don't have an ego, hopefully. So, in a nutshell, just always be open to new information. And if it replaces a belief you had before that was wrong, that's good. Now you're better for it. Be careful with ego. You do need it, but just be careful what you attach it to. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.